Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into grade 7 life science, specifically Unit 2, Lesson 4, to untangle a super common but completely backward mix-up about bacteria and plants. If you've ever found yourself lumping all microscopic life into one giant bucket, well, you're absolutely not alone. But today, we're going to use our source materials to clarify exactly how these tiny organisms actually operate in our world. Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll start by tackling this common misconception, dive into the hard scientific evidence, walk through a really cool ecosystem model, do a quick evidence-based student check, and then wrap it all up with a final transfer question. All right, part 1, the common misconception. Let's look at a mental trap that is literally so easy to fall into. So, have you ever thought this? The assumption generally goes like this. Only plants have this magical ability to photosynthesize and create food from sunlight, right? And all microorganisms, like bacteria and all that, well, they're just decomposers. Or worse, just germs whose entire purpose in life is just breaking dead things down. It's super easy to think this way because, we physically see plants soaking up the sun every single day, and we usually only hear about bacteria when it comes to stuff rotting or making us sick. But is that really the whole story? No way.
Which brings us to part 2, the scientific evidence. Let's look directly at the next generation science standards to clear the air here. The standards actually present a way more diverse and frankly fascinating picture of what microorganisms are really up to. By comparing two specific core ideas, LS1C, which covers energy flow, and LS2B, which is all about matter transfer, we can split microorganisms into totally different, highly specialized roles. Let's check out the first one.
So looking right at disciplinary core idea, LS1C, it tells us that it's absolutely not just plants doing this. To quote it directly, plants, algae, including phytoplankton, and many microorganisms use the energy from light to make sugars, food from carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and water. I mean, that's a total game changer if you thought only plants were doing the heavy lifting with photosynthesis. There are countless microorganisms out there right now, soaking up sunlight, pulling in carbon dioxide and water, and literally building their own sugars. They are producers.
But at the exact same time, disciplinary core idea LS2B shows us the other side of the coin. It explains that decomposing microorganisms have a completely different but equally crucial role. Quote, decomposers recycle nutrients from dead plant or animal matter back to the soil in terrestrial environments or to the water in aquatic environments. In other words, the actual physical atoms that make up living things in an ecosystem are just constantly being cycled back and forth. So, the big takeaway here, microorganisms are definitely not just a monolith doing one single job. We can basically group them into at least two totally different functional roles based on our standards. On one hand, you have photosynthetic microorganisms. They're building sugars from sunlight and carbon dioxide, acting a lot like microscopic plants. And on the other hand, you have decomposer microorganisms. These guys are the ultimate cleanup crew, breaking down dead stuff to cycle those physical atoms right back into the soil and water. They are fundamentally different functions, handled by totally different tiny organisms. Okay, moving right along to part 3, ecosystem model worked example. Let's see how this all connects when we apply it to a real-world conceptual model. To really lock this in, we've got to look at middle school standard MSLS2-3. It challenges us to develop a model that describes exactly how matter cycles and energy flows among all the living and non-living parts of an ecosystem. Basically, we need to trace where the energy comes from, where it goes, and how all those physical atoms get repeatedly cycled. So let's map it out step by step. And this 3-step cycle hits the nail right on the head. Step 1, energy flows into the whole system from the sun. Step 2, both plants and our newly discovered photosynthetic microorganisms grab that light energy to make sugars from CO2 and water. They're literally pulling energy into the biological web. Then step 3, eventually organisms die. It happens. But that's exactly where our second group jumps in. Decomposer microorganisms take all that dead matter and recycle the atoms directly back into the non-living environment, the soil or the water, so it can be used all over again. The energy flows straight through, but the matter just cycles round and round. All right, part 4, evidence-based student check. Let's put this brand new knowledge to the test against a realistic scenario. So picture this. A classmate comes up to you and confidently claims that if you go into a completely dark cave with zero sunlight, there is absolutely no way any microorganisms could survive there. Their logic? Well, there's no sun, and they figure all microorganisms need to photosynthesize, so the cave has to be completely sterile. Now, think about those two distinct roles we just pulled from the science standards. How would you handle that claim?
Well, relying on our evidence, we know for a fact that your classmate is wrong. Actually, based entirely on disciplinary core idea LS2B, decomposer microorganisms don't rely on light whatsoever. They don't photosynthesize at all. They make their living by recycling nutrients from dead plant or animal matter. So as long as dead organic material is, say, washing into that dark cave through an underground stream, or maybe just dropping in from above, those decomposer microorganisms are going to be right there in the pitch black, completely thriving as they recycle all those atoms.
Which brings us to our final stop. Part 5, final transfer question. Let's push this idea into a brand new scenario and see if it really sticks. Our sources give us one last crucial piece of the puzzle here with standard LS2.C, focusing on ecosystem dynamics. It's a great reminder that ecosystems are these massive, highly interconnected networks. It explicitly says that disruptions to any physical or biological component of an ecosystem can lead to shifts in all its populations. Basically, you pull one single thread and the whole web shakes. So keeping all that intense interconnectivity in mind, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative thought to chew on. Based on everything we now know about matter cycling and ecosystem dynamics, what if every single decomposing microorganism magically vanished from an ecosystem tomorrow, just gone? What exactly would happen to the physical atoms of all those dying plants? Without the decomposers there to repeatedly cycle those atoms between the living and non-living worlds, where does all that matter go? And how incredibly fast does the rest of the ecosystem shift as a result? Think deeply about what that unrecycled pileup would actually look like. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.